If you've ever felt like you don't belong on this earth, like you're waiting for something, searching for something, like there's a home you can't quite remember, I need you to hear this. You're not broken. You're not too sensitive. You're not crazy. Science just proved you right. And what's happening to you right now, this restlessness, this knowing that there's something more, it's not random. It's a signal, a preparation, because humanity is standing at the edge of the most radical evolutionary leap we've experienced in 50,000 years. Near-death experiences are skyrocketing. UFO encounters are increasing. Ancient wisdom about the Dreamtime, a reality where consciousness shapes matter, is resurfacing. And here's what nobody's telling you. These aren't separate phenomena. They're connected. They're symptoms of the same transformation. And you, yes, you, are part of it. Ready? Let's go deeper. Let me tell you what I've been researching for the past decade. 3 phenomena that, on the surface, seem completely unrelated. First, near-death experiences, people clinically dead coming back transformed, not just changed. Transformed, more compassionate, more intuitive, often developing psychic abilities they never had before. Second, the UFO phenomenon. Not the conspiracy theories, but the documented cases, the encounters that leave people fundamentally altered in their perception of reality. Third, ancient traditions speaking of the Dreamtime, a state where reality was fluid, where thought became form, where the boundary between mind and matter didn't exist. Most people look at these 3 things and see mysteries, separate, disconnected mysteries. But here's what I've discovered. They're not separate at all. They're pieces of the same puzzle, a puzzle that, when you put it together, reveals something stunning about what we are, where we came from, and where we're going. Because here's the thing, and this is what's going to sound wild at first, but stay with me. We are not native to physical reality as we currently experience it. I know how that sounds, trust me, I do. But what if I told you that quantum physics, mystical traditions, and cutting-edge consciousness research all point to the same conclusion? What if everything you've been feeling, that sense of not belonging, that intuition that this physical world isn't your real home, what if that's not a problem to be fixed? What if it's a memory trying to surface? Let's start with the first piece of the puzzle. And I'm warning you, once you see this pattern, you won't be able to unsee it. Here's what's happening right now, in hospitals and emergency rooms across the world. People are dying, clinically dying, and then coming back. But here's where it gets interesting. They're not coming back the same. Kenneth Ring, one of the pioneers in near-death experience research, studied thousands of these cases, and he found something remarkable. People who go through NDES don't just report seeing lights and tunnels. They come back fundamentally rewired. Suddenly, they're more loving, more compassionate. They develop abilities, psychic abilities, they never had before. Precognition, telepathy, an uncanny intuition about events before they happen. Ring called this the shamanization of modern humanity. Think about that phrase for a moment. Shamanization, the transformation of ordinary people into something more, something that bridges the physical and the non-physical. And here's the kicker. It's not slowing down, it's accelerating. More people are having near-death experiences now than at any point in recorded history. Why? Medical technology keeps improving, yes. We can revive people we couldn't save before. But that's only part of the story. Because the real question isn't why more people are having these experiences. The real question is, why are they coming back changed in exactly the same ways? Why do people from completely different cultures, different religions, different backgrounds, people who've never read about NDES, who don't even believe in an afterlife, why do they all come back describing the same transformation? More empathy, more intuition, a sense that physical reality is secondary to something deeper. It's as if, and here's where we need to pay very close attention, it's as if crossing that boundary even briefly triggers something, activates something, like they've remembered something they forgot or learned something they were always meant to know. Ring believes And the data supports this, that we're witnessing a species-wide evolutionary shift in consciousness. Not evolution of the body, evolution of awareness itself. And NDES, they're not accidents, they're initiations. But into what? That's where the second piece of the puzzle comes in. And this one's going to challenge everything you think you know about the nature of reality itself. Let me ask you something. What if reality wasn't always solid? What if once upon a time, and I'm talking deep time here, the kind of time we can barely comprehend? What if the physical world as we know it didn't exist? Stay with me. The indigenous Australians have a concept called the Dreamtime. Not a metaphor, not mythology, a description of an actual state of reality. In the Dreamtime, the world was fluid, malleable. Consciousness didn't observe reality, it created it. Thought became form, intention became manifestation, not gradually, instantly. And here's what's wild. Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, described something eerily similar. He talked about a time when humanity existed in what he called thought forms. We weren't physical beings yet. We were patterns of consciousness that could shape our environment through will alone. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's beautiful mythology. But what does it have to do with anything real? Here's what it has to do with everything. What if the Dreamtime isn't the past? What if it's the default state? What if physical reality, this solid, seemingly fixed world we inhabit, is the anomaly, the temporary condition? Scientists like David Bohm spent decades trying to explain this. He talked about the implicate order, a dimension where everything exists as pure potential, as waves of possibility, and the explicate order, our physical reality, where those waves collapse into particles, into matter, into the world we see. But here's what Bohm realized, and what ancient traditions have been saying all along. The implicate order is primary. It's the source. The explicate order, our physical world, is derived. Secondary. Think of it like a hologram. The holographic plate contains all the information. That's the implicate order. The projected image? That's our physical reality, the explicate order. And here's where it connects to NDES. When people cross over, even temporarily, they describe reality as frequency-like. As patterns of light and vibration, no longer solid, they're describing the implicate order, the Dreamtime. And they're remembering, that this is where we came from. But if we came from there, and if that's our natural state, why are we here? In this dense physical reality? What are we doing here? The answer to that question is going to change how you see your entire life. We're here to learn. Specifically, we're here to learn something humanity has been attempting to master for thousands of years. We're learning how to manipulate the hologram. Let me explain. Robert John and Brenda Dunn at Princeton ran experiments for decades. They called it the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Program. And what they discovered quietly without much fanfare was this. Human consciousness can affect physical systems, not metaphorically, actually. They had people sit in front of random number generators, machines designed to produce completely random outputs, and they asked these people to simply intend for the numbers to go higher or lower. And here's what happened. The numbers shifted, not dramatically, not every time, but statistically, significantly, repeatedly. Consciousness influenced matter. Jan and Dunn called it the interface between consciousness and the environment. But let's call it what it really is. We're learning to control the hologram, to interact with the quantum field, to collapse wave functions with intention. This is what manifestation actually is, not wishful thinking, not positive affirmations, but the gradual mastery of a skill we've almost completely forgotten. And here's where it gets profound. What if physical reality, this seemingly solid world, is actually a training ground? A simulation, if you will, designed specifically to teach us this skill? Think about it. In the Dreamtime, in the implicate order, manifestation is instantaneous. Thought equals form. There's no delay, no resistance, no learning curve. But here, in physical reality, there's time, there's matter, there's resistance. It's harder. And that's precisely the point. When you're learning to ride a bicycle, you don't start on a tightrope over a canyon. You start on training wheels on flat ground where mistakes don't kill you. Physical reality is our training ground. The density, the slowness, the apparent separation between thought and manifestation. It's all calibrated to give us space to learn, to practice, to make mistakes without catastrophic consequences. Because here's what nobody tells you about having the power to manifest reality instantly. If you don't know how to control it, if you're not coherent, if you're chaotic in your consciousness, you could create something terrifying. We're not ready for full access yet, but we're getting there. And the fact that you're feeling this pull, this knowing that reality is more malleable than it appears, that's a sign. You're starting to wake up to what you really are. But that raises an even bigger question. If this is a training ground, where's home? Let me tell you something that's going to sound radical. You didn't originate here, not on Earth, not in physical form. Hindu cosmology describes it perfectly. The Upanishads say that individual consciousness, what you call you, began as a ripple leaving an infinite ocean of awareness. That ocean is Brahman, undifferentiated consciousness. The implicate order, and for reasons we can barely articulate, call it curiosity, call it the desire for experience, call it evolution. That ripple separated, individuated, forgot its connection to the ocean, and then it descended into form. The Bible hints at this too. In the beginning was the word Sambotu. Consciousness, information, thought, and the word became flesh, consciousness condensing into matter. You are not a body with consciousness, you are consciousness wearing a body. Temporarily, David Bohm said it this way: we are holographic projections from a higher dimensional source. Every piece of us contains the whole, just like every fragment of a hologram contains the entire image. But here's what this means practically. If you're a projection, if you're a ripple from the infinite ocean, then this world, this dense physical reality isn't your final home. It can't be. It's a playground, a school, a training facility where consciousness learns to interact with the illusion of separation. And that feeling you've always had, that sense of not belonging, of homesickness for a place you can't name, that's not pathology, that's memory. You're remembering the ocean, the implicate order, the dreamtime, and you're starting to realize on some level that you're only here temporarily, learning, training, preparing, for what? Here's where it gets urgent, because the training isn't indefinite, there's a timeline, and according to some researchers, we're approaching the end of it. Terence McKenna studied this extensively. He looked at the acceleration of novelty in human history, the rate at which new, complex phenomena emerge. And he found something stunning. From the moment humans first became aware of having souls, roughly 50,000 years ago, to the moment we solve what he called the eschatological dilemma, the end of history, the transcendence of death, the mastery of reality itself, takes approximately 50,000 years, and here's the part that should make your spine tingle. We're at the end of that 50,000 years, right now. McKenna believed we're in the final moments of a crisis that's been building since humans first looked up at the stars and asked, "What am I?" And the answer is about to become undeniable. Let's talk about what that crisis actually is. McKenna called it the crisis of consciousness trapped in matter, the soul realizing it's stuck in a body, in time, in entropy and decay and death. And for 50,000 years, humanity has been grappling with this problem, building religions to explain it, creating technologies to escape it, developing philosophies to reconcile with it. But here's what's different about now. We're not just thinking about the solution anymore, we're approaching it. Look around, look at what's accelerating. Artificial intelligence reaching levels of complexity we can barely understand. Quantum computing allowing us to process information in ways that defy classical physics. Medical technology bringing people back from death, triggering those NDEs at unprecedented rates. Space exploration preparing us to leave the planet entirely. But it's not just technology, it's consciousness itself. Meditation is mainstream now. Psychedelic research is resurging. Millions of people are having spontaneous spiritual awakenings, mystical experiences, encounters with non-physical intelligence. The UFO phenomenon? It's not slowing down, it's increasing. And the people who encounter these intelligences, they come back changed. Just like NDEers, more aware, more conscious. As if contact with something beyond our reality cracks open a door we didn't know existed. McKenna said we're learning to free life from the dark chrysalis of matter. Think about that phrase, a chrysalis, a cocoon, matter as something we're meant to eventually emerge from, not escape, emerge, transform. The caterpillar doesn't reject the cocoon, it uses it, transforms within it, and when the time is right, it breaks free into flight. We're in that stage, the breaking free stage. And it's terrifying and exhilarating and chaotic because transformation always is. The world feels unstable right now because it is. Not collapsing, transforming. The old structures, the old ways of being, the old reality, they're not built for what's coming, so they're crumbling. And you, if you're sensitive, if you're awake, if you've been feeling that something massive is on the horizon, you're not wrong. You're perceiving the end of an era, the end of a 50,000-year experiment in consciousness experiencing itself through the limitations of physical form. But here's the question that matters. What comes next? After we learn what we came here to learn, after we master the interface between consciousness and reality, after we solve the eschatological dilemma, where do we go? The answer, according to those who've crossed over and come back, is stunning. Emanuel Swedenborg was a scientist in the 1700s. Brilliant mind. Then he started having visions, detailed, consistent visions of what he called the heavens. And he described something fascinating. He said heaven isn't one place. It's layers, dimensions, each higher than the last, each more refined, more conscious, more luminous. He described the highest levels as streaming light, pure frequency. No form at all. Now fast forward to modern NDEers. People who've never read Swedenborg, they come back describing exactly the same thing. They say, there are levels, many levels, and to ascend, you have to shed layers. Like taking off clothes, each dimension requires you to release more attachment, more density, more identification with form. One NDEer put it this way: to return to God, you have to take off each suit. And the process of learning, it never stops. Never stops. That's the part that should change everything. Because here's what we've been sold. Enlightenment as a destination. Ascension as an endpoint. Heaven as a place you arrive at and then, what? Stagnate in eternal bliss? No, the truth is wilder, more beautiful, and infinitely more expansive. Consciousness doesn't stop evolving, ever. Each layer of reality you master prepares you for the next. And the deeper you go, or the higher, depending on your metaphor, the more reality becomes frequency, vibration, pure pattern and information, less about form, more about coherence. This is what Bohm meant by the implicate order. It's not static, it's dynamic, alive, evolving. And you, the consciousness reading these words right now, you're on that journey. You've always been on that journey. Earth is just one classroom, one level. And the lessons here? They're about learning to manipulate form with consciousness while still mostly identified with form. It's training wheels. But once you graduate from this level, there are others. Levels where the ratio of consciousness to form shifts, where you're less body, more awareness, less particle, more wave. Swedenborg, the NDEers, the mystics, they all say the same thing. The journey is infinite. And here's what that means for you practically today. You're not behind. You're not broken, you're not failing because you haven't achieved some final state of enlightenment. You're learning, and you're right on schedule. The restlessness you feel? That's the signal that you're ready for the next lesson, the next level. So what is the lesson? What are we actually training to become? Let me show you. Terence McKenna had a phrase for what we're becoming. He called us technicians of the sacred. Think about that. Not priests, not believers. Technicians. People who understand, practically, how to work with the plasticity of reality. how to interface with a universe where mind and matter are one. We're children learning to become engineers of the non-physical. And like any training program, we start small. Simple exercises, basic skills, meditation, learning to quiet the noise to enter coherence, manifestation, learning that intention, when aligned with the field, produces outcomes. Synchronicities, learning to read the feedback the universe gives us. These aren't mystical flukes. They're early-stage training in a skill set we're meant to fully develop. But here's where it gets really interesting. The UFO phenomenon? The encounters with non-human intelligence? McKenna believed these are practice doses, controlled exposures to realities beyond our current framework. To help us stretch, to help us adapt, to help us realize that consciousness isn't limited to biology, that intelligence exists in forms we can barely comprehend, that the universe is far stranger, far more alive than our materialist paradigm allows. Each encounter, whether it's an NDE, a UFO sighting, a mystical experience, is a calibrated nudge. A gentle or sometimes not so gentle push out of consensus reality. Why? Because consensus reality is too narrow, too limited, too rigid for what's coming. We need to become comfortable with paradox, with realities that contradict each other, with truths that can't be captured in language or logic. We need to become fluid again, like we were in the Dreamtime. And here's the beautiful, terrifying truth. We're being prepared for a state of existence where what we think, we create, where the boundary between inner and outer dissolves completely, where we are quite literally gods, not in the egoic sense, in the operational sense. Beings who understand how to work with the hologram, how to shape reality from the implicate order. But, and this is critical, we're not ready yet, not fully. Because here's what happens if you give someone godlike power before they've learned coherence, before they've mastered their own consciousness, chaos. So we're being trained, gradually, carefully, through lifetimes, through dimensions, through endless cycles of forgetting and remembering. And you, yes, you are part of that training program. Every challenge you face is curriculum. Every breakthrough is graduation to the next level. But there's one thing we need to be very careful about. One trap that could derail the entire process. And this is where Bohm's warning becomes essential. David Bohm spent his life trying to articulate something almost impossible to put into words. He said, "The conceptual pigeonholes we use to categorize the universe, they're our creation. They don't exist out there." Think about that. We create boxes: matter, energy, space, time, physical, spiritual, self, other. And then we forget we created them. We treat them as if they're objective features of reality, but they're not. Out there, Bohm said, there's only the whole, undivided, indivisible, Brahman, the implicate order, the ocean of consciousness. Everything else, every distinction, every category is an artifact of perception, a tool we use to navigate experience. And here's the trap: as we evolve, as we learn, as we expand our consciousness, we have to be willing to let go of those boxes, to transcend the conceptual frameworks that got us this far, because they won't work at the next level. The map that guided you through elementary school won't get you through university. The framework that made sense when you were a child won't serve you as an adult. And the reality tunnel you inhabit right now, no matter how expanded it feels compared to where you started, it's still a tunnel. There are levels beyond it, perspectives you can't even imagine yet, and the only way to reach them is to release your grip on what you currently believe is true. This is what the mystics mean by beginner's mind, what Zen calls don't know mind. It's not ignorance, it's the opposite. It's the wisdom to know that every answer you arrive at is partial, provisional, a stepping stone, not the destination. And this matters, God, this matters. Because as we approach this evolutionary leap, as we move closer to graduating from this level of reality, we're going to be tempted to crystallize what we know, to turn it into dogma, into certainty, into rigid belief systems. We'll be tempted to say, this is how it works, this is the truth, this is the final answer. And the moment we do that, we stop evolving. Boehm's warning isn't theoretical, it's survival information. If we're going to navigate what's coming, if we're going to master the interface between consciousness and reality, if we're going to return to the fluidity of the dreamtime without destroying ourselves, we have to stay open, flexible, curious, willing to be wrong, willing to update, willing to shed our certainties like a snake sheds skin. Because the ultimate truth isn't something you grasp, it's something you become. And that brings us to the final revelation, the one that connects everything. So let me bring this all together. Why are NDES increasing? Because we're being initiated, remembering what we are, remembering the implicate order. Why is the UFO phenomenon accelerating? Because we're being exposed to intelligences that exist beyond our current paradigm. Practice doses, training. Why are spiritual awakenings, psychic abilities, manifestation experiences becoming more common? Because we're learning to interface with the hologram, to work with the quantum field, to remember the dreamtime. And why does all of this feel urgent, accelerated, like the world is on the edge of something massive? Because we are. We're at the end of the 50,000-year crisis, the crisis of consciousness trapped in matter, learning to free itself without losing the lessons it came here to learn. This is why you feel like you don't belong here. Because you don't, not ultimately. You're a holographic projection from a higher dimension, a ripple from an infinite ocean, consciousness temporarily condensed into form for the purpose of training, learning how to survive in infinity. That's the phrase the Aboriginal Australians use. We're just learning how to survive in infinity, not in limitation, not in time, not in matter. In infinity, in a reality where consciousness is the substance, where thought creates form, where the boundary between you and the universe dissolves completely. And the reason this training ground exists, the reason for Earth, for density, for time, for all the struggle and limitation, is to teach you coherence, control, mastery, alignment, because in the dream time, in the implicate order, you don't have the luxury of delay. What you think manifests instantly. If you're chaotic, you create chaos. If you're fearful, you create nightmares. If you're fragmented, you fracture reality itself. So we're here to learn coherence, to master our own consciousness, to become the kind of beings who can handle the responsibility of infinite creative power. And you, yes, you, reading this, feeling this, knowing on some level that this is true, you're not crazy, you're not broken, you're waking up. The restlessness is your soul recognizing that graduation is approaching. The homesickness is your memory of the ocean calling you back. But not yet. Not until you've learned what you came here to learn. And here's the beautiful part. Every moment of your life, every challenge, every breakthrough, every mistake, every triumph has been curriculum. You've been training all along, and the fact that you found your way here, to this message, to this understanding, that's not coincidence. You're ready for the next level. So what do you do with this? Where do you go from here? Let me tell you. Here's what this means practically today. First, trust what you're feeling. That sense of something more, that intuition, that physical reality isn't the whole story, that knowing that you're here for a reason. Honor it. You're not delusional. You're perceiving something real. Something that science is only beginning to confirm and ancient traditions have always known. Second, practice coherence. Every day. Whether it's through meditation, breathwork, time in nature, creative expression, find the practices that bring you into alignment, into stillness, into presence. Because coherence is the skill. It's what allows you to interface with the quantum field effectively. To manifest with clarity instead of creating chaos. Third, release dogma, including this, including everything I've just shared. Hold it lightly. Use it as a map, not a destination. Stay open to being wrong, to updating your understanding, to discovering perspectives you can't even imagine yet, because the moment you crystallize your beliefs, you stop evolving. Fourth, connect. You're not alone in this. There are millions of people on this planet right now going through the same awakening, feeling the same restlessness, asking the same questions. Find them. Share your experiences, build community, not because you need validation, although that helps, but because we're learning how to do this together. This isn't individual enlightenment, this is collective evolution. And fifth, be patient with yourself. You're learning something that takes lifetimes to master. You're training for a mode of existence that defies everything your current reality suggests is possible. There will be days when you forget, when you slip back into the old paradigm, when the density of physical reality feels overwhelming. That's okay. That's part of the process. The caterpillar doesn't become a butterfly overnight. There's dissolution, there's chaos. There's the terrifying moment when it's neither one thing nor the other. We're in that moment, collectively, individually, and it's uncomfortable. But it's also sacred, because on the other side of this transformation, on the other side of this 50,000-year crisis is something we can barely imagine. A reality where we remember what we are, where we master the interface between consciousness and form, where we return to the Dreamtime, not as children, but as technicians of the sacred. Gods who know how to use their power wisely. And here's something I need to share with you. This is the final episode of the Beyond Reality series. Thank you for being here, for every episode, for your willingness to explore these depths with me. If you want to revisit the full journey from quantum mechanics to this evolutionary leap, the complete playlist is in the description below. So if you're feeling this, if any of this resonates, if it sparks recognition in your soul, drop a word in the comments. One word that captures what you're feeling right now. Not for me, for you, and for the others who are going to read this and realize they're not alone. And if you want to continue exploring these ideas, hit that subscribe button. Because while this series may be complete, this conversation, it's just beginning. Because here's the ultimate truth. You didn't find this series by accident. In a universe where consciousness shapes reality, there are no accidents. You're here because you're ready. Because some part of you, the part that remembers the ocean, the part that knows the Dreamtime, the part that's been waiting for this moment, called this to you. So welcome. Welcome to the evolutionary leap. Welcome to the community of beings learning how to survive in infinity. Welcome home. I'll see you in the next one.